Tonight I will tell you a story that is calm and quiet, a story meant to help you rest. It is not frightening, though a little mysterious. It is the kind of tale that begins slowly, like the tide moving in and out, and lulls you deeper into a state of peace. Far away, on a lonely coast, there is a small village. The sea is always near. You can hear it in every street. You can smell the salt in the air, and you can see the waves rolling endlessly on the horizon. It is the kind of place where time slows down. At the edge of this village, on a rocky hill that looks out across the water, there is an old lighthouse. Its tall shape rises into the sky, dark and silent. The light no longer shines. It has been many years since ships depended on it, yet still the people in the village tell stories about it. They say the lighthouse has its own voice. On quiet nights when the waves are gentle, you can hear something in the wind, a hum, a whisper, perhaps even footsteps on the wooden stairs inside. No one really knows, but everyone agrees. The lighthouse is a place of mystery. One evening, a traveler arrived in the village. He was tired from many days of walking, and he wanted nothing more than rest by the sea. He found a small inn with wooden walls and windows that looked out over the coast. The innkeeper gave him a simple room with a bed, a desk, and a lamp that glowed softly in the corner. When the traveler opened the window, the sound of the sea poured in. The air was cool and carried the scent of salt and driftwood. He breathed deeply and felt his body relax. It was as though the sea itself was welcoming him, inviting him to let go of his thoughts and simply listen. That night, as he lay in bed, the traveler could not sleep right away. The sound of the waves was too captivating. They rose and fell like a slow breath, steady and endless. Sometimes they were gentle, sometimes stronger, but always rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Through the window, he could see the dark outline of the lighthouse. It stood tall against the stars, silent, unmoving, and for a moment he thought he heard something, a faint creak carried by the wind, perhaps just the sound of wood shifting in the night, perhaps something more. The traveler closed his eyes, letting the sound of the sea guide him into dreams. And in those dreams, he saw the lighthouse. Its windows glowed faintly, as though someone had lit a lamp inside. He dreamed of footsteps climbing the spiral staircase, slow and steady, echoing through the stone tower. But when he awoke in the morning, the lighthouse was silent again, empty as always. The days passed peacefully. The traveler walked along the beach, collecting shells and watching the waves. He sat in the small cafe by the harbor, where fishermen told stories of storms and nights at sea. And always, when the sun set, he found his eyes drawn to the lighthouse. It stood there like a guardian of the coast, strong and patient. One evening, as the sky turned orange and gold, the traveler asked the innkeeper about the old tower. "Does anyone ever go inside?" he asked. The innkeeper shook his head. "Not anymore," he said. "The stairs are old, the doors heavy. The light has been gone for years, but sometimes people say they hear it. The sound of the lighthouse, alive again." The traveler smiled, but a thought lingered in his mind. He felt drawn to the lighthouse, as if it were quietly calling him. So, after supper, he set out on a walk along the shore. The night was calm, the air filled with the sound of gentle waves. The moon hung low, casting silver light across the water. The traveler walked slowly, breathing deeply, every step in rhythm with the sea. Closer and closer he came to the lighthouse. Its tall shadow stretched across the rocks, dark against the shining sea. When he reached the base of the hill, he paused. The path wound upward, narrow and uneven, with grass and stone beneath his feet. He placed his hand on the cold iron railing and began to climb. Step by step, he moved higher, the sound of the sea growing distant behind him. At last, he stood before the wooden door of the lighthouse. It was heavy, weathered by salt and wind. He pushed gently, and to his surprise, it opened with a soft groan. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of old wood and stone. The spiral staircase wound upward into the shadows. Each step creaked under his weight, slow and steady. The sound echoed faintly, like whispers in the air. The traveler climbed, feeling the rough stone walls beneath his hand. There was no fear in him, only curiosity and a strange calm. The higher he went, the more he could hear the faint hum of the sea through cracks in the walls. It was as though the lighthouse itself was breathing, alive with the memory of its past. At last he reached the top. There was no lantern, no great light, only an empty room with wide windows looking out across the sea. The traveler stepped closer. The view was endless, waves stretching to the horizon, the moon casting silver across the water, the village below glowing softly with lamps in the streets. For a moment, he thought he saw a flicker of light in the corner, like a lantern flame. But when he turned, there was nothing, only shadows. He stood there in silence, listening. The sea, the wind, the slow creak of the tower. It was not frightening. It was peaceful, steady, eternal. The traveler sat down by the window, resting against the cool stone. He closed his eyes, breathing slowly, listening to the rhythm of the waves, and as he drifted between waking and sleep, he understood. The lighthouse was not haunted. It was simply alive with memory. The sound of the past lingered in its walls, the footsteps of keepers long gone, the hum of the lantern that once shone across the sea. It was not a place of fear, it was a place of rest. When he finally rose and descended the stairs, he felt lighter, calmer. The door closed behind him with a soft sigh, and the traveler walked back down the hill. The sea welcomed him again, its waves rising and falling, carrying him home to the small inn. That night, in his quiet room, he opened the window once more. The lighthouse stood against the stars, silent and strong. The traveler lay in bed, the sound of the waves filling his ears, his breath slowing, his body growing heavy, and as he closed his eyes, he felt safe in the knowledge that the sea would always sing, the lighthouse would always stand, and the night would always carry him gently into sleep.